So our goal with this event was to give you guys some perspective on what the real world is looking like these days. To say, okay, we do all this stuff in TAM and we think it's great. What's really happening out there? What skills are employers looking for? So we have 4 quite different people, but they're all involved in some type of creative/technology field. So I will introduce you to them. First, we have Todd Berger, a well-known graphic and website designer, artist, and brand strategist. He and his longtime partner, Lucian Fohr. Fair.
Close enough.
Own a two-man design studio, Berger and Fohr. Together, they practice cohesive visual communication characterized by modernism, minimalism, objectivity, and the desire to create lasting, memorable work. Though he's more of a fisherman, Todd also has a history of racing bikes, including mountain road bikes and cyclocross. And to his left, Kathy Hagan Brown, who is co-president of Karsh Hagan Advertising Agency in Denver. Encouraged to be an entrepreneur by her father, Karsh Hagan founder Tom Hagan, Kathy launched her first agency at the age of 26 and successfully ran it for the next 25 years. She has supported numerous community initiatives and led the Denver Advertising Federation as chairman. And to her left is Tony Tung, who is Vice President and Director of Interactive Production at Crispin, Porter, and Boguski, where he leads, makes great work, and prevents bad work from happening, which is probably a full-time job. Tony does this while also building great teams and growing the super producers of the future. He has been involved in several notable digital projects, including Microsoft, Best Buy, Burger King, and Old Navy. And last but not least, Ingrid Alongi is co-founder and CEO of Boulder's QuickLeft. She is a CU graduate, but it wasn't until later that she began her career in web development in Southern California. She's been running engineering teams and managing clients ever since, including joining the Boulder startup scene in 2007 and then leading QuickLeft. When not at work, Ingrid is a competitive track cyclist, and she's earned 2 national titles.
Actually, 4.
4.
But anyway.
So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. And like I said, we want to keep this pretty informal. I have a couple questions up my sleeve, but hopefully at some point you all will ask questions, as this event is designed to be helpful for you. But first, I'd like each of you to talk briefly about what you do, what your day-to-day work is like, who you work for, all that kind of good stuff, and then we'll get into some questions. Todd.
Hi, guys. So as Joel mentioned, I'm part of a 2-man team. We have a very small studio. There's just 2 partners, 2 designers, so we pretty much do it all. Obviously, our focus is on design as it relates to identity, overall communication, web, and brand, I think, as Joel mentioned a little bit, but there's a lot of things involved in running your own small studio, from proposing work, quoting work, generating the ideas for the work, producing the work, managing the billing of the work, dealing with any legal surrounding the work, which fortunately we have really good people around us, bookkeeping, accounting, legal, etc. So we're interfacing with those people as often as we need to be, but our primary focus is on making work. So our whole process is geared to getting everything outside of making work around the periphery done as efficiently as possible to get to the business of designing. So most of my time, fortunately, is spent designing, but there's a lot of other things that happen around that.
Can you all hear in the back? Okay. Great. Thank you. I'm co-president of Karsh and Hagan, which means I take on a leadership role. I spend a lot of time working with clients. Spend a lot of time working on new business. I'm probably also instrumental in creating a culture. We have 65 people. We have disciplines from brand strategy to media. So we have a lot of different brains in the room. And so they could be a creative brain, they could be an analytical brain. So our job is to keep everybody happy and headed in the same direction and keeping our clients happy. We work on Colorado tourism. We work on American Crew men's hair care products. The guys in the room probably use a lot of that. Let's see, Visit Denver, some pretty high-profile clients. We're a local agency, although I think our work is nationally recognized. So thank you for having us.
I'm Tony, and I work for Crispin Boguski. We are one of several offices, so we have we're up in Gun Barrel in some crazy industrial park that looks like a CIA front. It's a big nondescript building with no markings whatsoever next to like factories. We are about 300 to 400 people here. We've got an office in Miami of about a couple hundred people there too. We've got various offices all over the place. So we've got one in LA we just recently opened up. So we have 3 here in the States, and we've got an office in London and one Gothenburg in Sweden. We are a full-service advertising agency. We've got a huge team of internal developers and producers, and we do a lot of things in-house. We also work with a lot of vendors, local vendors. We've worked with Ingrid's group often, and we do a lot of interactive work right here. I would say the majority of the interactive work done by the agency occurs here out of Boulder in Gun Barrel, next to the Berger King. You wouldn't think it. It's a pretty interesting dynamic, and we do a lot of the same things that my colleagues to my left and right do. We scope, we produce, we design, we pitch, we cross-collaborate with a lot of different groups, and we make everything from broadcast commercials to mobile games. So it runs the whole spectrum. We do a lot of media work too, although we're not focused exclusively on that. We like to think of ourselves as more of an idea or creative lab or factory, and we are trying always to kind of innovate, evolve, and stay relevant and current in the digital space. So some of our client work that you might have seen, we're the agency of record for Microsoft, Best Buy, Old Navy, Applebee's, Arby's, Coke Zero, and Kraft Mac and Cheese. So we're really kind of all over the spectrum. So we try and keep our work diverse and always fresh. So thanks for having me.
Ingrid Alongi. The last app I coded actually was Kraft Mac and Cheese, sadly. So my role has shifted. I actually got my undergraduate degree here at CU in '97 in Women's Studies and Philosophy, but went on to grad school in Women's Studies and did a minor in computer science. It was really exciting to be able to solve problems, and you could solve things really quickly. So I spent my career doing development, and ironically, this is really good advice for you all, unlike Todd, who's done a great job of doing what he really loves, which is design. When you start a company, you have to be careful that you might not get to do the thing that you loved, and which is why you started the company. So I no longer write code, but I'm actually really enjoying some of the other things I've been learning. I do a lot of biz dev and sales. Who knew that this introverted engineer actually is great at talking to people about their projects? It's mostly just because I get really excited about implementation and solving problems. So that's kind of fun. I do like process, and I like creating teams, so I also do a lot of kind of team creation, process, refinement, just making our workflow kind of smooth and things like that. Some of the cool projects that we've worked on recently, the ones that we're not allowed to put on our website with Crispin here, but we worked on the Old Navy Cheermageddon project. We worked with Photo Bucket recently. We work with Red Robin, so we do more heavy on the applications engineering side of things. We do work with other design firms at times. For instance, we work with Todd and Lucian as well on a lot of really cool projects. So my job mostly is kind of, I think I would call it connecting and making sure everything's kind of running smoothly. And email. That's my other job.
All right, so I'll start with a question of my own, and I'm kind of interested in this as an instructor. as I think the students will be as students. What skills are employers looking for in industry today? What is underrepresented, do you see in kind of that workforce that's coming out of college now? And any of you can chime in. There's no order here.
Well, I guess I'll start. I would say we've definitely seen a trend of people in technology and traditional coders and developers but I think naturally people are interested in doing a lot more than just the coding part. People are more interested in becoming part of the creative process. So in a given brief or when we have an assignment, a trend that you're seeing a lot, and we do it too, is we like to get the entire team in the room. So traditionally, at least in advertising and in a lot of content generation companies. So I have a background. I've been a creative for about half my career. So I was a creative at Disney and ABC. So I worked on a lot of script writing and game design and a lot of character development and that kind of And so you're seeing this blend happening. And so I would say that if you are studying, traditional technology and you're a programmer, definitely embrace kind of that creative edge and to keep, taking those classes and to, just trying to incorporate every part of the process as opposed to just one piece. And traditionally it's always been the piece moves from here to here, the concept, here's the major concept, that gets broken down to, here are the script writers or the game designers. And then the game designers, break it up into different kinds of assets. And then you have visual interface designers working on something, and then those pieces may get handed to a cycle that's development, polished, and then it keeps going in that circle until you reach that final product. But I think everyone nowadays pretty much has a say on kind of the end product, and I think it's smarter in approach in that having the entire team there up front, you're getting the best work out of people, and you're bypassing a lot of problems that you would normally have by having a creative technologist in the room. That's kind of a new term too, I think, for me at least. I mean, I haven't seen it in tons of places, but people are starting to throw that term around. So, people are, a lot of people ask me, what is a creative technologist? I'm like, honestly, I'm not sure. It's this new hybrid role, you're a technologist and you're creative. So, it's someone who's part of that process, that evolutionary process of a product to me. So I would say, definitely get well-rounded, know how to combine and apply your technical knowledge to the creative idea. So.
I'm going to add to that the teamwork aspect too. I mean, specifically since Tony was talking about developers, there used to be a time where you could just be a rock star coder and it didn't matter because the problems were really hard and technology wasn't as far along, and you could kind of work in your silo. And that's not the case anymore. Back in my day, I had to handwrite SQL. There were abstraction layers and things like that. I like to tease my employees about being old. But now it's the technology has progressed so much. It's not rocket science. You're still inventing things, and it's still you're still solving difficult problems. But you have to sell those implementation ideas to the rest of your team. So you really have to be able to communicate about your implementation ideas. You can't just use a giant hammer to solve the problem. So teamwork is extremely important.
I agree with my colleagues. I think we look at people and we look at a person's almost as a T-shaped, right? So they have a lot of experience, but then they're experts maybe in one arena. And you bring that expertise to a team, and it takes a team in advertising to get things done. It doesn't really matter what your skill set is. You need to contribute in a way that the team values. I think the other part of it is being curious. Your students, your curiosity doesn't end because you've graduated. It almost just begins, to be honest with you, because there's so many opportunities to learn and try new things, and don't be afraid to try them. Don't be afraid you're going to fail. You're going to fail. Fail, because you're going to learn so much more when you fail. So I think we look for people who aren't afraid to take a risk as well, and aren't willing to kind of put themselves out there, or aren't puttering around and bringing new ideas. And then lastly, I think strategy is really important. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but if you bring good thinking to your point of view, or to the project, or to the solution, because really we're about ideas, but we're also trying to solve problems. If you bring good strategy and good thinking to it, you're going to you're going to be well respected as well.
I don't have too much to add to that one. I think my peers sort of covered it.
You go first next time.
What trends do you see in today's workforce that you think students should prepare themselves for?
Man, it's moving fast. I just think the world is moving so fast. I honestly don't know how you're going to keep up. I mean, I think you can keep up, don't get me wrong, but I just think it's such an exciting time. There's so much opportunity. It is such an amazing time to be in this industry. At the same time, it's overwhelming. I mean, I think everybody can talk about how they think that they understand it, but honestly, I don't know if any one person understands, where we're headed and what's next. And that's what makes it exciting, and you can be a part of that and play a role in that. But I also think it's really overwhelming.
So I'd agree with that. I think it's pretty overwhelming. Things are moving super, super fast. And so really sort of asking yourself the hard questions to figure out where you fit in that overwhelmingness, I think, is very important. And I'll use myself as an example. So I started designing and building websites in the late 90s. I think I built my first website in 1997. The internet was sort of in its infancy. Code was pretty light and fairly easy to wrap your head around then. There was the design capacity of the web, because bandwidth was so slow, was pretty limited, so you could only push things so far. So designing and building a website in the late 90s, which seemed pretty radical then, was a much simpler thing than it is today. Code today is evolving at a super fast rate. Ingrid, you can speak to that better than I can. And okay, so that's going to bring me to where I'm getting. So code's evolving super fast. Design, on the other hand, really isn't. To be good at design, there's sort of a core set of principles one has to grasp and understand and always sort of iterate on and philosophize around. But then those principles can be repeated and applied to technology. And when I say technology, I'm sort of generalizing for things that involve code. Now, to be good at design, you have to understand where code and technology are going to design for them. But this sort of comes back to the things are overwhelming and moving really fast. We stopped writing code very purposefully because it was too stressful for us to keep up and be as good at design as we were at writing code. So about 5-6 years ago as a studio, we made a clear delineation, I guess, in our practice and chose to focus explicitly on design. It was always our stronger suit, and rely on firms like Ingrid's or other firms whose expertise is in code and development to focus on development. Now, with that being said, and I personally sort of err on the specialist side of things. I think the specialist is very important culturally, socioeconomically, just in a big picture. I think the big picture economics, I think the specialist is very important. I think there's huge value and opportunities for the generalist, which is sort of the creative technologist now. And it's a specialist generalist, but more of a generalist. And so anyways, coming back to what Kathy said, this overwhelmingness, you sort of have to figure out what side of the fence you want to be on. If you feel like constantly iterating on code and learning new code and adapting to the latest technology completely excites you, then something like development or something more technology explicitly focused probably won't feel overwhelming. Whereas if that is seemingly chaotic to you, something on more of the traditional design side of the fence might feel more grounding. And not that like we're constantly learning, and the organization of my studio, just my partner and I, is really based on the two of us learning and evolving and getting better. So we're very familiar and constantly keeping up with the latest and newest technology from a design stance. How do we design for it? We don't need to know how it all works, and we just can't, to be really good at what we do. So I think sorting that out for yourself, and there's people that can be in the middle, the creative technologists, and then there's pure devs and pure designers, and in an agency structure, there's people all around that. But I think thinking that through is important when you start looking for a job.
I have something to add too. Just in terms of approach, one thing I'm seeing changing is, when I started out, there was like a set of steps and a path for a career. So you start out kind of here, and you put in your time, and then you go here, and you don't speak out of turn, I guess. But now what I'm seeing, and is actually really valuable to me, for instance, who's very, very busy, is when people are starting a new job and or working on a client project and they notice something and they actually say something about it is really helpful. And so not waiting for someone to kind of tell you how to do the job, but always kind of thinking about how you can improve the process, or you can improve the client engagement or solve the client's problems better. And having that expectation off the bat, regardless of how experienced you are. And I think that you kind of said something a little bit like that too, Tony, is that everyone at the table sort of has this input in this collaborative process. And so those communication skills are really important, being able to write clear emails, things like that. I'm seeing a need for more and more.
I don't have much to add to that. I would say that, becoming a problem solver is something that I always focus on, and Callie mentioned that. And it's whether, it doesn't really even matter personally to me what the ultimate goal behind it is. If you're, there's a certain joy related to being able to solve a problem using a team and different skill sets. And whether it's as, to give you an example, a lot of things we do are frivolous. We had an app a number of years back called Whopper Sacrifice. It was something we did for Burger King. And the whole goal of the brief was to prove how much America loved the Whopper. And so it was a Facebook app, and you guys are all too young to probably even used it. Basically, we would give you a free Whopper coupon if you sacrificed 10 of your friends. So you basically cut ties and unfriended, defriended 10 of your friends, and instantly a coupon surfaced on your screen, which you could go redeem down the street. And when we first started, we told Facebook, we're like, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's kind of this fun stunt. And they're like, well, is it possible? We're like, well, you should know. So we worked back and forth with their team. We finally got it to work. And, we sacrificed like 250,000, 500,000 people. And they called us, and they were really pissed. And they said, you guys the function of this app is designed to do exactly the opposite of what Facebook was designed for. And, and for us, it was a stunt. It was fun. It was frivolous. It was to prove a point for our client. And so that's one example. Or it could be something more, business requirement solving. So recently we did, a Domino's Pizza Hero app. And it was basically it's a pizza game. It's free. And you download it, and it basically walks you through the process of what a real employee would do to make a pizza. And at the end of that, if you're really good, we've hired like 40 people from the game. And it actually was never designed to do that. But that was designed to solve the business issue of Domino's wanted their clientele or their loyalists to know what exactly went to the pizza. So whether it's something frivolous as defriending people for a burger or, educating, the consumer masses about what the business process is, I think solving those problems is what brings a lot of people joy, at least in our agency structure. Sometimes you come without an idea. A lot of people don't know what they want to do. And, after being in the business, they see the different areas where there's creativity and technology and that intersection, and then there's like the business side of it. And there's a group that just, concentrates on creating the experience and the game design. So that may be of interest. So you get a little bit of a chance to do everything. And, coming back down to the problem solving thing, that's, I think, a mindset that's important moving into the future.
So my last question before I open it up to the audience, what advice would you give to your former self if you were sitting out in the audience? What would you say?
I'll start because I've fucked up all over the place. And this all depends on your personality, but for me, I was stubborn and very, I still consider myself an idealist. I run my studio with my partner pretty idealistically, but keeping an open mind and looking far beyond the surface when possible, when opportunities arise, which is something I now try to do to a much greater extent than I did when I was younger. And it's hard because, like in our case, being little and fortunately being busy and getting lots of opportunities, there's always opportunities coming up, and we spend a lot of time processing these opportunities to decide which ones we want to pursue. Do we always spend enough time pursuing them to the extent we should? I'm not sure, but it's something we're trying to focus on. And I know when I was younger, a lot of things, opportunities would come up that maybe I didn't even see as opportunities. So it's just sort of keeping an open mind and broadening your worldview, because there's opportunity everywhere, and it's just a matter of one's interpretation of it, if you can find the potential in a thing. So maybe just being more open.
I'd agree with Todd. When I was growing up, my dad told me I could do whatever I wanted to do. You can do anything you want to do. And this is, 40 years ago when women really couldn't do anything they wanted to do. But he told me I could do anything I wanted to do. And so I went to med school, started out there because I don't know, for some reason I thought that I could make a lot of money and be a doctor. He probably told me to be a doctor too. And I got in the room and I looked around the room and I thought, I have nothing in common with anybody in this room. Nothing. And so that's where I realized that I needed to be true to me. I needed to be true to myself. And so I think you have to decide, as Tony said earlier, what is it that you are passionate about and what is it that you want to accomplish. I was fortunate enough that in the next breath, my dad said, you should be an entrepreneur. He's a wonderful mentor. He's sitting in the front row. But he's a wonderful mentor, and he said, you can be an entrepreneur. And as I was, your age and I got a job, he'd say, do you still have that job? Do you still have that job? I'd say, yeah, I have a job. I need a job. And so he encouraged me to be an entrepreneur. And as I matured and got married and got divorced, I realized that being an entrepreneur was really great for me because it gave me the freedom to manage my own life, right? So I, as a single mother of two, was granted permission to run my own business, do what I loved and passionate about, had some wonderful mentors, but also could build a company around what I thought was important. And so for me, being an entrepreneur was probably the most important part. It happened to be in advertising, which I also loved and I'm passionate about. But I feel like there's not a lot of things I would have done differently because I had such good guidance. I made a ton of mistakes. I remember going to clients and they'd say, could you do this? Yep, I can do that. And I'd get back to my office and go, how are we going to do that? But again, it's the courage and I think the faith in yourself and surrounding yourself with really good people and taking it from there. So you make mistakes because you learn from them. I learned more from the mistakes I made, I think, sometimes than from my successes. I think a couple other things, 80-20. Every day we get beat up by clients, every single day. It's like sometimes you just go, okay, I'm coming in. Because you just know that they don't like a part of what you're doing or they don't agree with you or whatever. And so your job is to build a relationship, a really good relationship with the people that you work with. And I think that that is one of the things I really like to do, because if you have a good relationship with somebody, then they're going to trust you and they're going to rely on you. And those battles become a little easier to take. Then my last thing is that when I was younger, I would work with anybody. They could be abusive, they could be stupid, they could be whatever. And as I aged, I realized, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to work with people and surround myself with people who are the best and work with people that are kind, have a good heart, and appreciate good creative. Takes time to get there. I'm like 3 times older than everybody in the room. It takes a while to get there, but I think that it's one of those things that I kind of hold true to my guiding principles, and it's worked out really well for me. So.
My answer is kind of along the same lines as Kathy. I don't know that I would change too much in my life. Just because, one, for me personally, that's kind of a fundamental rule that I have, is I don't really, I don't really regret. I have taken a lot of paths in my life that I felt that I needed to, and that goes back to me. Another fundamental philosophy that I have is, to try, explore, be well-rounded, even if you don't think it's directly related. I think that personal happiness influences a lot of what you do on a day-to-day basis, and I don't for 1 second regret a lot of the career choices. And again, I said that I was a former creative. I was very scared to jump out of creative into, being a producer, going into production. And I was afraid that I would lose a grasp on the creation process, to what I was talking about earlier. I want to be a part of the conversation during the concepting phase. And, you hear a lot of these, at least in the advertising industry, well, if you're a producer, you don't really have much say in the creative process. And to a certain degree, that's true just based off of your experience. But as you earn the trust of your team and those around you, and in the company you're at or the agency you're at, you find that you become a part of those conversations more and more. So I would say, don't be afraid to try that out, to ask, to say, look, I'd like to sit in the brief. I think that I have something, of value to add. I think I have something that I can contribute. So, becoming well-rounded and just trying out different things. I tried out a different schools of design, and I was with a lot of different design groups in Los Angeles, and some people had a lot to teach me, even though I didn't think that I would be able to learn much from that group. It ended up that I ended up working for these people for a couple of years, and learned a lot. I mean, they were physicists and mathematicians. These guys would sit around the table talking about when they went to Caltech with Richard Feynman, and just completely over my head. And the more I was exposed to it, the more in love I fell with. I just wanted to do more and be around and just kind of absorb that, even though that was never part of my background. Like, I hated math. Like, I went to school, and I could do it, and to a large degree I was good at it. But maybe it was my professors, and I don't know if there are any mathematicians in here or quantum physicists, but it was very difficult for me. And it wasn't until I finally met this group of programmers who had this kind of background that I learned to appreciate that. So again, it's a path that I wouldn't have traditionally chosen, but because I was exposed to it, I was, just, heck, we'll try this for a little bit. So I learned a lot from them, and we went on to create cool open source 3D, things, and we debuted at SIGGRAPH, something I never thought I would be doing. And it just leads you to those interesting places. So I would say just try everything, and then I think that in the end that still adds to your bottom line, your career, what you do, what you love, and what you make of yourself. So
if I could give myself advice, it would be to do a better job of articulating the value I was providing. I don't think my confidence level, maybe getting in, back when I was doing computer science and starting in the industry as a developer, and I think it still is very male-dominated, but the attitudes have shifted quite a bit. So it's not quite as kind of rough as it used to be, but so I think if I kind of maybe took a lot of that in and maybe felt like I wasn't that great of a programmer, wasn't a good engineer, and it wasn't sort of till later where you're talking to other people that are having the same problems or worse, that you're like, oh man, I am good at this. And so the other problem with not being good at kind of seeing how you the valuable contribution you have at some places, that you end up kind of being the garbage collector. So you might be doing all this stuff and no one notices, and if you can't kind of argue your case for a raise or for a promotion or to be included into a meeting that you normally wouldn't be in, you kind of will stagnate. So things go as they should, but I wish I was better at that. And sort of related though, I'm also very competitive, and not in a inappropriate way, but I like to channel it in nice areas like on the bike or whatever. But I think patience was something else that I would have felt like I could have used more of. So, just because you're maybe supposed to go here, and then you're supposed to be an entrepreneur, and then you're supposed to go to Techstars, and then you didn't, so then it's a disaster. Like, I'll talk to people who didn't get into Techstars, for instance, and they're really disappointed, and they sort of, don't know what to do next, or there's so many different opportunities, and just keep kind of sticking to your goals and keep, working at things, and eventually they come, and they don't have to take the same path as everybody else. Or the story you read about, like Zuckerberg, you don't have to do it the same way he does, and in fact, you're not going to. So every story is kind of different. So just appreciating that, just sticking with things, you'll get there. I didn't start QuickLeft until I was 35, so there.
So I'm going to open it up to all of you for some questions, and I'll play Oprah and bring you the mic so we can hear everyone. So, any questions?
So I'm kind of curious. Sounds like you guys are all pretty successful now, but I want to know about the times when you felt that you were just so broke that it was even profitable to continue doing what you're doing now. Like Todd, for example, you have your own business now. At what point did you say, hey, me and my friend can start a business and actually make money? Were you working a job previously before that? I'm just kind of curious to see what kind of jobs, what kind of dead-end jobs you guys are working maybe before
How many
you started working something you enjoyed.
Yeah, I'll start with that one. So I came out here trying to make it as a professional mountain bike racer, which I did a sort of poor job of. I made it, but just ended up in a lot of debt at the time. And I was doing that and had an independent landscaping business and gardening, just myself. So as I was winding down racing bikes, I was gardening and landscaping and had started my first studio with a partner. So that was in early 1998. Jumping ahead, the small studio thing isn't for everyone, because while I think we're pretty successful in our practice and we're at a point in our careers where we're very confident in our skill set and we see ourselves as being quite valuable to all sorts of folks, we're sort of 5 minutes from not having a job. There's just two of us, and we don't know where our work's coming from ever. So all we can really try to do is produce very good work, communicate that we're doing very good work, hopefully, and create a sort of ethereal vibe, if you will, of what's happening in our studio, that it is good, that it is positive, to attract more opportunities. So I'm probably on the maybe, and we'll see what everyone thinks, I'm on the riskier side of things. There's no guarantees in there's no paycheck. I'm my paycheck. So while I've made it on some level, it's sort of it's an open question, But that's also, that approach and philosophy is very much my character and my business partner's character, and that's why we mesh and we're open to taking risks and kind of running it hot and fast and a little bit loose. Not our design approach, but everything around it. Because we believe that can create exciting opportunities that if we were in a more rigid structure, perhaps couldn't. So we're always sort of open in that manner, and it also keeps us nimble and very dynamic. We can move in any direction we want at any given time because there's no real fixed structure around the two of us aside from our partnership.
I would say that I've done well so far. Right? But certainly had those moments where I know that many of our young people feel the same way. We have a really good internship program, and I'm pretty close to a lot of the interns, and they're struggling because they're not making very much money, and they're thinking, okay, I'm working another job. Okay, so I leave here and I waitress and I whatever. And I have to be honest with you, I did the same thing. I did the exact same thing. It might have been a long time ago, but I did the exact same thing. Because at a certain point, you're at a stage where you're just trying to get your arms around what is it that I want to do and what is it that I'm really good at. And until you try all these things, you don't really know what you're really good at. And so I just continued to take more things on. I mean, at a certain point, there were days where I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just going to explode. But I kept doing it, right? Because I was looking for that thing that I was going to be good at. So what was my role going to be in whatever it was I decided to do? So happened to be advertising, happened to find a role in new business and that kind of thing. So that's where I played. That's where I figured it out. But I had to go through a lot of self-exploration and a lot of hard times. Honestly, you laugh about them. You're going to laugh about them. When you're really successful, you're going to be laughing about them. But they're very painful as you're going through them. If I can help, let me know, because I remember. They're not things you forget either. You don't forget those. I told somebody earlier that my first job was the hardest job to get. I never worked harder to get my first job. And from there on, it just seems like it worked. Like once I figured out my direction and where I was going, then people wanted me because I was doing such a good job. I was performing at a level that was good. So.
To add one more thing to that, if you can get very good at what you're doing, which is a lot of hard work, it gets easier.
Yeah.
So if you see a path to opportunity through something you're interested in and you're remotely good at it, and you can look a little deeper and figure out how to get very good at it and then work at that until you're never there. It's a moving target, right? But get as close to being very, very, very good at that thing as you can. Opportunities will open up, and I think if you're just pursuing that path, opportunities will open around you.
I got a couple things. So Todd was talking about being nimble. That's something that's definitely challenging in an agency as large as ours. We are nimble with ideas internally in concepting and prototyping them, and that's where we maybe have an advantage where I can think of an idea and literally send it off to a team of about 5 people to code until the next morning, which I would never do, and then have that ready to just kind of like play through. But getting a real business proposition out there, we're definitely not as nimble. I mean, I'm sure that Todd and company could turn around something very quickly and all agree and all have similar goals. We would go through layers inside of our agency, and there's a certain formalized process too on how you interact with the client, whereas they probably have the client's trust right away, and he could make 2 phone calls and have that be approved. As to your question, success. I'm still in debt. Don't let the title mislead you. But there are a lot of life circumstances. I've had a pretty adventurous life, I would say. I lived in Moscow for a couple of years, in Tokyo for 8, and I was telling Todd earlier that I was telecommuting between Honolulu, Tokyo, and LA, and had a flat in 3 cities at one given time. And I've been adventurous enough to just try things out. Most broke I've ever been was probably, the AOL job, which do you guys even know what that is? So that was $6 an hour when I first got there, with bonuses completed after assignments. I was writing reviews for music and bars, and I was a graphic designer on top of that. And so they eventually, boosted me up to a whopping $12 an hour. At that time, I took up a job. I was a tactical combat instructor. I was a reserve officer with the LAPD and a service officer with the campus police, and I'd been training since I was 11. So I was like, well, I'm good at that, so I want to teach people how to defend themselves. So I taught self-defense, and then with 3 buddies of mine, we taught ATF and DEA agents on like arrest techniques and other kinds of probably horrible things we talk about in this class. But that's how I kind of like got through a couple years with that supplementing my whopping $12 an hour at AOL. But I mean, in my heart, I just wanted to be like, I just want to design, instead of wield weapons and teach melee combat. But it was, something I kept at. So eventually I got full-time, and I eventually got that job at Disney. And so, I'm still, like I said, I'm still in debt. But it's all right. One day. I have a plan.
I probably shouldn't say this, but I feel like I'm not very smart, and I don't know what, like I always was on the wrong side of the bubble when it came to like salaries and stuff. So I wasn't one of those developers making insane money for HTML, just coding HTML, and I keep thinking of things that will, okay, I'll be rich, and now I pay employees more than myself. So I don't know. I haven't figured it out. But how I got here was I actually got laid off from a startup, and the economy was terrible, and there was no jobs. I think Google and Yahoo had laid off a bunch of developers as well. And so I had been at a few, I had always been one of the first few employees at every job I've had. So I've watched that growth, and so I was able to take those lessons. But I don't know. It does get easier, and I think I'm laying plans so that I will be successful financially, but and then I see other people at other agencies driving their Audis, and I'm like, I just don't get it. So
They're in debt.
yeah, maybe. So it's sort of like there's a lot of illusion to like what you're supposed to be, and that's something I'm struggling with even now as a CEO, like the kind of person I'm supposed to project myself as, and the things I'm supposed to have, and it isn't me, and being true to yourself is really important. But it's all a juggling act, I think. Yeah. Proceed with caution.
Another question.
So you guys talked about this creative technologist, to where like you kind of have to be an engineer and a designer. It's no longer like a separate spectrum anymore. I think people in the TAM program are definitely more on the design side. To what extent do you think the designers have to kind of learn the code and the science to be able to communicate with the people on that side?
Well, I think I'd have a different opinion than you guys. Okay, my team would say that they might be a little more harsh. They might, it's still a little bit of like, your prowess in coding is respected, and I'm a little bit more practical in that I see a working knowledge and understanding being all that you need. But I think that the territorialism of developers might kind of say you need to know a lot more. I think it's more important, though, to be really excited about what you're doing. You can't make yourself a good engineer if you're not interested in it and you don't like it. I don't know, again, if I was a great engineer, but I loved tinkering and solving problems.
I'd say, like, if you're a traditional engineer and you really want to just code and, stay in that world, there's definitely those opportunities. I think that if you're someone who's good at coding but has an interest in more the product development side, and I mean conceptually, not just building it. So there's people like, I just want to build this. Give me the blueprint, tell me what my challenge is, and I will build this. And they spend thousands and thousands of lines in code, later, and they get the product done. And then there are the people who say, you know what, I get this, but it's missing, this product or this whole app experience or this site or whatever it is, it's kind of missing an elegance in the experience. And they want to work more on the conceptual design side of things. What is the user journey throughout the whole thing? They want to look at the UX documents and, make adjustments to it instead of looking at the UX documents and saying, okay, that's my roadmap. I'm just going to make this happen. So I think it's an individual level of interest. There's room for everything within that sliding scale. So whether you want to just stay in the world of code and newest developments in technology and just go hardcore that path, there's a place for you. And if there's a place where you want to do a little bit of everything, but take your engineering and technology knowledge and apply it to the product development or the business side of things, maybe it's you that finds out that solution or thinks of that solve to the business challenge, and no one else has been able to do it because of your background in technology, and you just say, well, you know what, this can be done, and if we combine these two things, we'll be doing something that no one's ever done before. And so you see a lot of that kind of innovation happen. So it just is really going to depend on how you want to fit, as they were saying, where do you see your place in this world? What do you want to pursue?
Do you want to do both design and development?
Yeah.
And so I would argue that's the most lucrative position you could be in. If you can grapple with both and really wrap your head around design and get the principles of good, sound design and develop strong development skills, that's like the best of both worlds. There's very few, I have a few peers that I'm honestly a little bit jealous of. That there was a point where I made a very conscious decision, and to some degree, my partner's a lot younger than me. I taught him a lot of his development skills as he was coming up. I sort of drove the conscious decision that we had to back off development in our studio because it was just wreaking havoc on my mind, trying to keep up with what was happening in that space and grow as a designer. And we could sort of flip the switch and pick it back up. It would be hard, but it would come quicker now. But around that same time, a couple of my friends chose to balance that clearly better than we did, focus on development, focus on design. And the two of them are now two of the most successful designer developers in the country, perhaps internationally. And they're being chased down by agency after agency, firm after firm, all sorts of brands, and they're sort of the whole package. It's challenging to be able to bring both to that. I'm talking about a very high level now, you know, top of the dev game, top of the design game. But if it's a path you're interested in pursuing, it's a valuable one.
One more question.
All right, so how do you guys deal with a client that wants to kind of go one way with a project, but you kind of feel in the bottom of your heart that your idea could take it farther than theirs, and you kind of like, how do you deal with that?
Everyone's got some.
There's so many stories and ways to answer this question. I think that at a certain point, we try to remind the client that they hired us for our expertise. And again, the client can do anything they want. You can do whatever you want, but our personal opinion, our 35 years of experience, our entire team, I mean, so you try to just do as much as you can in terms of convincing them. And I think you always just bring it back to what their goals and objectives are. So if you're, for example, somebody who didn't want to spend some money on technology for their annual report, like an interactive annual report, they wanted to just do traditional brochureware kind of thing. Well, if you want to position yourself as a leader in technology, you're really not aligning yourself with messaging and with the capabilities that you're also trying to relate to your constituents. So again, if you can find a way to link that to something that doesn't connect with who that is that they want to be and what their brand is, then I find that works pretty well too, because instead of telling them you don't like something, you're reminding them of who they want to be. And my job is just to help you get there. So that might be one way to try it. There's a million, I don't know.
Yeah, similar.
You could just say, no, I'm not going to do it. That's what my creative people go, no, I'm not doing that. Well, let's talk about that.
So
great at that.
part of my little entity, just being two of us, is we dictate the direction we're going before the project begins, and that's the direction we go. And if we don't like it, we don't take the project. That's an extreme stance, but all of our work hinges on that. And our contractual agreements, taking it a step further, are set up that if that direction gets redirected and steered somewhere we're not comfortable going, that we can walk away from the project at any point in time. So I didn't figure out how to implement those steps till a little bit later, but that's now how things are organized. Subsequently, sometimes starting a job or getting into a new project could take us a little bit longer because we're trying to ensure that we're steering it in the right direction and everyone's on board, but it's worth it for us in the end to create the sort of trusting relationship we want with our clients and to ultimately produce the kind of work we want.
I try to channel my inner Todd because he really has developed this philosophy that I feel like we need more of in our company. And traditionally, developers are kind of like you give them the blueprints and they build it. And my challenge has been sort of creating these consultants who are very good at what they do and have lived technology for such a long time that they just have these opinions that are very well informed. And so that's been one of my challenges, is that we get ourselves into terrible situations because we are wanting to say yes and we're pleasing the clients. And, you know, I really admire Todd's way of doing that. And I think that you can do that. And, you know, we've never gotten in trouble or had a bad experience by saying no, but we have by saying yes.
And I agree. I think you have to decide if it's working for you or not. And many times, I'm sure every one of us has said, you know what, you're a wonderful person, you have a great product, it's not a good fit. It's just not a good fit. And, you know when that is, and you have to decide if it's worth it or not. But sorry.
So it is 5 o'clock. We're going to shift this out into the lobby for a reception, and you can chat with our panelists, ask them your questions yourself. So join me in thanking our panelists. That was great.